So I think just to be clear, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning, what we're going to do is give you an exact run through of what we're doing with the market this afternoon. So we're your guinea pigs. So any feedback you've got on what really resonates today or what doesn't would be most welcome at the end. But in the first instance, thanks very much for coming along this morning. So the last time we gave a detailed update on our blueprint activity, or at least the last time we did it in person, was way back in September 2019, and that was for the launch of Blueprint 1 to take you back in history. And whilst I'd like to say an awful lot's changed in the meantime, I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room that's bearing the scars that bears witness to that comment. So we've had several virtual updates since 2019, but we figured it was the right time to regroup in person, and what a time to do so, because we've got an awful lot to cover through with you this morning. So it's been a pretty significant year. There's been an awful lot that's been delivered in the past 12 months, and that's a credit to everyone across the market, everyone that works in the corporation, and indeed our partners within the association. So we've agreed a path forward, and we found a way of making it all happen. So huge thanks to everyone for their time and their collaboration. So today is really all about giving you a much better understanding of Blueprint 2 and the tangible and, dare I say it, substantial benefits that it will deliver. So we've designed the day to be interactive, to be collaborative, and hopefully to be informative. So please do take some time to have a look around the zones after we finish speaking in here, and of course speak to the teams that are critically involved in the development of the program. So I just wanted to say a few words to sort of set the scenes and jog our memories on what this program is all about and what it's intended to deliver. We're then going to hear from Steve Hicks, who's standing in for Chris Halberg from DXC, who will be here this afternoon. That's good news, because Steve talks a lot more eloquently and intelligently than Chris, but don't tell Chris that I said that, and obviously Steve knows the program inside out. After that, we'll hear from Steve and Bob in conversation. As you know, Bob James is Lloyd's Market Transformation Director, and he's done more transformations than transformations have existed, including with Aon, you can say boo if you want to, Bank of America, AIG, QBE, and many others. So I think we're in pretty safe hands in terms of the leadership and the development of the program. So let's just do a bit of a recap on Blueprint 2 and what it's all about. So as with all transformation programs, it's an overused word, but it is a bit of a journey. And we've been through several issues to deal with our legacy infrastructure and to ensure that we can take cost out of the way in which we do our business. And that's with the sole objective of delivering value to our end customers and ensuring the market can support a framework that increases its premium throughput and increase its relationship with customers. So we've got good foundations, so it's a good place to start, and we've got a lot to build on. So when we started with the Future Lloyds program in September 2019, we were determined that we dealt with all of the constituents. So we spoke to everyone across our market. That was brokers, underwriters, associations, investors, capital providers, and of course, even end customers. And overwhelmingly, they wanted three things. Firstly, they wanted much more comprehensive and higher quality coverage than they were getting today. They wanted a much simpler process in being able to access the Lloyd's and London market. And most importantly, and perhaps not surprisingly, they wanted to significantly lower the cost of doing business. So we've reinterpreted that as doing things better, faster, and cheaper. And that's really underpinned all our thinking on transformation ever since. So it supported the discussions that were in the prospectus, if you remember the prospectus from May 2019, and everything that's evolved through that into next generation thinking. It defined what we said in Blueprint 1 in September 2019, which was by definition an ambitious and aspirational plan as to what we might do to set the Lloyd's and London market up to be very different. But some of the items that were discussed in Blueprint 1 are actually alive and well today, and many of you know that. So, for example, the syndicate in a box concept is done, and we've got 2 London Bridge investment vehicles, very different ways of investing in the Lloyd's market. So when it came to the second plan, which was Blueprint 2, it was really important that that took the key tenets of Blueprint 1, but actually translated Blueprint 1 into a series of tangible and executable solutions. So we've seen these delivering through a series of different principles, which I'm just going to take you through. So Blueprint 2's mantra is to create a better, faster, cheaper marketplace for those using it and those that would benefit from it. And that really is the future at Lloyd's as we've seen it translate. So how do we make our market better? Well, we do that fundamentally by harnessing data as a core attribute of what we do, data, not document. And we do that through re-engineering all of the processes and the way in which we go about our business. So in that respect, we work very, very closely with the LMG, who created the London Market Data Council, and they, in turn, have agreed the scope of a core data record. Now, that sounds really quite boring, but it's not, because there is no core data record today that operates for corporate and specialty insurance anywhere in the world. If you do retail insurance or SME, it's all defined by a core data record. So it is genuinely a first, and that, in turn, has led to the opportunity to recast the market reform contract if you want the framework of the policy that we ultimately issue to an end customer. So we've reconciled a number of key partnerships that have been associated with the programme. In addition to the Data Council itself, we looked at the way in which we manage delegated authority business, or some call them MGAs, and that's seen the creation of DCOM and DDM, which is a credible platform for participants that operate within an MGA framework. And so we now see today 80% of contracts, which is almost 40% of the business done at Lloyd's. 80% of the contracts that are on a delegated basis are alive and well in the DCOM platform, and we've reduced the mandatory data fields that need to be captured to support that business by 40%. So we've also been anxious to the second point to ensure that we can make it faster of the way in which we transact business. So our early evaluation of the way in which open market business was done in the London market was it took roughly 6 weeks to issue a policy document. So the intention of what you're seeing and what you'll see today is to be able to do that exercise in minutes, if not seconds. So quite dramatically different from the way in which things used to work. And similarly, we've been anxious that we do that on the claims side of life as well, with faster claims payment. And we've seen nearly 6,000 payments made by way of the faster claims pilot since it's been rolled out. And it was even used to settle some claims recently with Hurricane Ian. So the final point is really to be able to make it cheaper to do business. And we agreed in the early discussions with DXC around the technology build that they could and would reduce the cost of processing activities by 40%. Now, we might not say this afternoon, but clearly that gives an incredible framework for every managing agent, every syndicate, and every broker to think radically and dramatically differently about their cost base should they want to do so. So if you think about the time frame we've been having these discussions in, we've already seen the operating costs at Lloyd's reduced by 4 percentage points. And our expectation is that we can reduce those operating costs by roughly the same amount again. Now, I don't say that with any pride because we needed to. We needed to reduce our operating costs by 8 to 9%, but we're creating a framework that could definitely go one step further. So I guess the key point on the better, faster, cheaper is this is not all a distant vision. It's a reality, and we are beginning to see those differences happen today. And, you know, what's critically important through all of this is that we ensure that Lloyd's and the London market remains relevant, reliable, and competitive in a world that's changing fast around us. So that's absolutely critical for our purpose. You know, we can't respond in times of crisis if we can't process claims much more efficiently and much more quickly than we do today. And we cannot react to a world that's changing under our eyes if we're not data-driven in the way in which we think and act and go about what we're doing. And we can't provide, dare I say it, leading cyber solutions if we're cyber vulnerable because of the systems and processes that we use. So it's really critical at the heart of what we do as an industry that we can show some true leadership here. And it's worth reminding us that our customers already think we're doing this. So imagine prospective employees joining us. They already think we're a very highly tech-enabled industry. So don't go and tell anybody we're not at the moment, because that wouldn't be great for the next generation. So if they knew the extent of our current systems, I think Bob will talk about them being mainframe, green screen, then that might put people off thinking about our industry or coming into our industry. So we've got a bit of catching up to do, as well as ensuring that not only do we catch up, but we're able to get ahead. So on one level, the transformation we're talking about is existential. It's not a question of wanting to do this. We absolutely have to do this. No two ways about it. But it's also incredibly exciting, because the only marketplace, I can say this with you in the room, the only marketplace for insurance in the world is here. Bermuda's not a market, Singapore's not a market, so whatever anybody says, they're not markets. So for us to be able to represent ourselves very differently creates a huge advantage for us. So it's a real chance for us to demonstrate what we can do when we pull together, when we join up, and when we look at processes and solutions through a single lens. So as we stand here almost at the close of 2022, it is a pivotal moment, and hence the discussions that we wanted you to have today. We've got, it says here, a mosaic of stakeholders. You can tell I didn't write mosaic. That's a word way beyond my library consideration. What it means is that we're a marketplace that has 200 brokers that turn up every day, 100 insurance companies, and 4,500 MGAs. So it is a very, very complex market to deal with in a good day. And I think we are already demonstrating that we've delivered some early wins, and people can see that. We've definitely got the right people and a great team led by Bob James. And we've got a data council that's been incredibly well led by Sheila Cameron, that's really set a different tone of the way in which we go about our business. And dare I say it, credit to Bronick Machada and the team at PPL, who are leaning in to a different way in which PPL could connect into the solutions that we're talking about. And also, I'll say it because Chris isn't here, credit to DXC. So the London market's perception of DXC is the heritage of what it was rather than what it is. Just to give you a bit of detail, DXC is a company that employs 140,000 people. So if they want to stand up and they really want to develop something different, then they can do it. And they have wanted to stand up in this conversation. So we put our faith in a lot of people, and we are dependent on a lot of others to help us execute what we're doing. But we feel very good about the people that we've chosen to. And, you know, I think things do take a bit of time. You might have heard us at the Insurance Insider Conference a week or two together saying, look, it might take us a quarter or two longer to get to exactly where we want to get to. That's not a bad thing. We will still be live in 2024, which has always been our objective. What is better is that you take a little bit more time and you get it absolutely right. Bob, when he talks to you, will talk a little bit about cost. There is no cost overrun. The costs that we estimated for the transformation are exactly the costs that we expect to incur. And dare I say it, what's really encouraged us is the market is investing something like 3 times what we're investing to make the change. So there is real buy-in to what we're doing. I mean, the key message, and I hope it's a message you'll take away, is we just have to get it right. And, you know, if you look at industry and business around the world and you look at transformation programs, they're not like they were 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. People get transformation programs right. They do execute them, and they do execute them really well. And that's our expectation too. We will get this right. and we will get it in front of a marketplace that will benefit hugely from what's going on. So when we talk to the market this afternoon, what we really need them to do is adopt and use. Brackets haven't really got any choice, but we're not going to say that. We're going to encourage them to say, lean in, adopt, and use the solutions that are being put in front of you. And we've created a stack of communities. So when I think of Joe Dainty sat in the front row, he's got a nightmare job of dealing with these communities. They've got brokers, insurers, vendors of all sizes, and there's a huge amount of engagement. I think this year alone, I think it's something like 2,000 meetings have taken place. So when people say you don't meet with us enough, you do think, I'm not entirely sure how many more times we can meet with you. But it is really, really important that we lean into those communities because the feedback we get is valuable. Our preparedness to change is important. And it is critical that they do buy into the solutions that we've got. The solutions we're putting in place are designed to safeguard the future competitiveness of the marketplace. So if you go back to that cost point, we were told very, very clearly when we were looking at Lloyd's, you've got to sort out performance. And I think from various conversations we've had, we've done that. You've got to show some leadership. I think many, many people, and you in the room, are standing up and showing the leadership. And we've been told we had to address our costs. We're a different marketplace, but on average, we were 9 points higher than operating outside of London. Now, there is a value in the wholesale market, but clearly not 9 points. So we certainly had to deal with cost. And we're confident that we've ultimately put the right solutions together, that we have lent in to the teams of people that we need to, and we are confident that we've got a marketplace that wants to adopt the solutions that we've got. The changes that we're making will be really, really significant, and they create an opportunity at a critical time in our marketplace. All of the data is telling us that the penetration of insurance will double in the next decade. It's not done that for 40 years. So if we really want to steal our share of that opportunity, our share of what the London market is, our share of what Lloyd's is, then going through what we're going through at the moment and ensuring that we can be better, faster, cheaper is critical for our success in the way in which we go about that. So I'm now handing over to Steve, I think, who is, or Bob even better. I'm going to now hand over to Bob. Bob's going to take you through a detailed update on the program. So thank you.
It's the Steve and Bob show today. This afternoon will be the Chris and Bob show. This is, if you've met Chris, Chris is a little bit less tall than Steve. And I was reflecting, I've got one of these, we both have these crazy mics on that rock stars wear, The last time I wore one of those, I was in a boy band, Bobby J and the Transformers. And it didn't work out real well, so I had to go into insurance. Thank you for being here today. It's nice to see all of you. I was just looking around the room at all the people that I've gotten to know over the last 18 months and all the people that have helped get us to where we are today. And there's a lot of people in the room that are on the pitch that have done that. So for those of you who've been involved, thank you. We're, I think, about halfway through a journey on a roadmap that we set out at the first part of this year in the interactive guide, which we'll talk about. Steve, who you know, has been future at Lloyd's since before I got here, just recently got promoted to Deputy Transformation Director, along with my buddy Joe Dainty, who's back in the back now getting mic'd up. And we've split the program between adoption and readiness, which Joe has, and delivery and end-to-end business architecture, which Steve has. So we'll walk you through a dialogue today that Chris and I will have with the marketplace, and then we'll have a panel of the workstream leaders to talk about what has happened in the program this year, workstream by workstream. This afternoon's panel will be some market participants who have signed up to be what we are calling the Vanguard program, which is a fancy name for early adopters. So we've had both brokers and carriers that have asked to become early adopters on the tech and adoption journey with us. We'll have some here this afternoon to talk a little bit about why they did that and what they hope to get out of it. And then I would encourage you, as we will encourage the marketplace later on, to spend some time with the breakout zones, because we get a lot of questions about, well, what does this mean, or how does this work, or who's involved in the program. And as you can see from the slides, today's event is being co-sponsored by DXE and Lloyd's, but it's really DXE, Lloyd's, the joint venture, which is owned by Lloyd's, the IUA, and DXE, all the market associations, and this afternoon we'll have a lot of the tech providers that support the marketplace. So it really is trying to move an ecosystem in a particular direction to digitize the future. There's 5 key messages that I'd like you to try to walk away with today, if you remember anything at all. Some of it has to do with why we're doing this, and some of it has to do with how you can help. You heard John talk about some of these things. You know, this is a journey that's a data-first journey. If anybody asks you what is Future at Lloyd's at its core, it's really about trying to standardize data and process it digitally for better, faster, cheaper. But because we have a standard set of data, the marketplace can do things that it could not do before, and I'll talk about some of those when I get to some claim examples. Part of that, though, is really upgrading a tech stack that's over 25 years old. We don't talk a lot about that because it's not something that many of us see. But if you worked in the joint venture, particularly in any of the processing organizations, you would be sitting in front of a green screen that looked like when man first landed on the moon. It's about that old. It's a mainframe-based system. It's not very resilient. So when it has problems, it's harder to fix those problems. It's not sitting in the cloud, which is sort of the direction for the future, and it's not easy to change. And so underlying all of this new tech, in addition to new capabilities, is a new cloud-based tech architecture. Secondly, the second message is around data is we're trying to just do something really simple. Let's agree on a common way to talk to each other via data. Let's process it digitally through a digital gateway. Let's have less humans involved in touching it, which should improve the time to serve, the cost to process, the accuracy ratio, and give us new capabilities for the future. The other message that it's kind of my stump speech recently, is something I'm calling a one-team approach, which means we cannot deliver this if only one part of the marketplace does its part and the other parts do not. So if you were to go down, for example, particularly in January, down to G3, you would find a bunch of people down there, and you'd have to ask them who they work for, because we have people that get a pay slip from Lloyd's, we have people that get pay slips from consulting firms, we have people that get pay slips from DXE, we have people that get pay slips from the joint venture, all working together to deliver this. And this one-team approach is really physically going to be represented in this co-location of the team, first on G3, and then when we get G4 retrofitted. If you haven't been to G4, it looks like a empty Tesco warehouse right now. It'll be on G4. Fourthly, the tech will land, and Steve's going to talk about this, the tech will land in 2024. However, 2023 is really about building that tech, and as John said, making sure that it's fit for purpose, and we have the right subject matter experts in the marketplace involved in building that tech along with DXE, so that when the market gets ready to adopt it, it is something that they can readily use. Today, we want to make sure that you just understand where we are on that journey, what got done in 2022, what didn't get done in 2022, what's on tap for 2023, and what the marketplace will be doing to get ready. We talked about Data First Journey. We've talked about the LMG Data Council. One thing that you've heard us talk a lot about is this digital gateway. And there is a digital gateway. If you're on the digital gateway team, just raise your hand. It's okay, please. There's one person at least. Who else is on the digital gateway team? Peter's he is on the digital gateway team. Anybody else? So the digital.
Ed's hiding at the back.
Thank you. Thank you. The digital gateway team is building a digital gateway so that we can accept the CDR data, which is being turned into Accord standards, and bring that data into this new processing platform in a validated fashion so that it can be processed without a lot of human intervention. That's probably at the core of all of the tech build. The one thing that we're really doing that's new, in addition to putting the tech in the cloud, which may be new for us but not new for the industry, is the digital gateway. And that digital gateway is what will make the difference in the faster, better, cheaper. When we get all this done, you'll have new capabilities that you can use in the marketplace that we can't use today because we don't have a fulsome, complete, accurate, and standard set of data. Things like EF&OL, the ability for a customer to electronically let their insurer or insurers know that they've had a loss. The ability to take the claims that come in and triage them so that we can send the claims not only to the right marketplaces, the right syndicates, but also the right adjusters that have the expertise to settle those claims. And then finally, digital settlement mechanisms to be able to settle the claims electronically like we do today for faster claim payments. Probably, though, the most important thing that'll happen in the marketplace from a common set of data we won't see for a few years, and that has to do with the marketplace innovating based upon a common set of data that's digitally processed. And if you want an example, at least my personal example, of a marketplace participant who's done that, go study the whole Kiln Key Insurance Syndicate, which is data first. Steve and I are going to talk you through the progress that we've made in Blueprint 2 in 2023 and 24, what the focus will be. And to give you some of that background, we remember we launched the interactive guide in January of this year. It charted the progress of a roadmap that started in Q1 2022 and ended in Q1 2024. Through that interactive guide, we laid out key dates and milestones of where we were in the marketplace. And you can see on the slide that's up on the screen, the green chevrons are things that were delivered, the yellow ones were things that were delayed, and the gray ones were things that were deferred. And I'll talk about some examples there, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that we didn't deliver everything. Some things got delayed for a variety of reasons, and a couple of things we decided not to do upon spending more time looking at that. So let's just talk about some of the accomplishments in 2022. We don't talk a lot about this, but in December of last year, I think it might have been New Year's Eve, is when we finally finalized the joint solution plan, which was the contract that gave the marketplace the ability to build this new technology. And that is a big milestone, given the fact that the last time we had tried to do it was over 25 years ago. Secondly, we got a lot of tech vendors, and you might remember this. In September, we did a press release that said we had tech vendors like Accord, DXE, Verisk, Trace, and Advantage Go committing to upgrading their platforms so that they would work with the digital gateway. Last week, we released a story that said that all market participants have now agreed to make the necessary system changes to make their platforms compliant. That's a huge accomplishment. Now, the proof's still in the pudding. Saying something is one thing, doing it's another. But we have these tech companies publicly saying we want to make our platforms work with Blueprint 2, which is predominantly the digital gateway, which will be a huge adoption increase. And last week, I think the last big one, which was important and dear to my heart, was getting PPL to agree to do that. So that's a big deal. And Joe, who was somewhere in the audience here, along with his team, was very involved, thank you, Joe, in making sure that that happened. Now we just got to get them to actually do the tech upgrade. You heard John talk about the establishment of the Data Council. That was very important because it all of a sudden became the market participants that were agreeing on the data standards, the market participants that were agreeing to turn the CDR into an Accord set of standards, so we'd have one set of standards for commercial specialty for both the Lloyd's marketplace and the London market more broadly. And as I've said in many forums, and she's not here today, but if you see her in the building and want to say thank you on our behalf, I would appreciate it. Sheila Cameron, who chairs the Data Council, has brought us further along in getting agreement and consensus in the marketplace and how to move forward than we probably would have ever done on our own. And I keep teasing her that the church across the street on Leadenhall someday will get changed from St. Mary the Axe to St. Sheila, because she's really done a fabulous job. I mean, the CDR will ultimately give us standardized data. It'll give us the ability to do all the things that we've said we're going to do, and we're going to embed it in a new document. You've heard probably this term, the MRC, which is the document that the broker uses to create an insurance agreement between the syndicates and the customer. It's effectively the insurance policy. We are going to upgrade that document through the Data Council to something called the MRC version 3. Well, you might say, well, why is that important? It's important for two reasons. One, it's a much better formatted and easier to read document, but more fundamentally important, it embeds the data standards, the core data standards in the MRC document. So the document now has structured data, which makes it much easier to extract for the purposes of running it through the gateway. And it would, because I pestered the claims team in Future at Lloyd's for some time, would be remiss for me not to thank them and the marketplace for what's happened with faster claim payments. As a reminder, faster claim payments allows a delegated claim authority, which is a third party that oftentimes settles claims on behalf of the syndicate, to settle claims and not worry about their loss funds going into negative territory. If you don't know what that means, it's if I'm a delegated claim authority and I get 400,000 in claims a month, Paul Brady might give me a loss fund of 500,000 pounds. If there's a cat that goes through my marketplace and I have to pay out 2 million pounds in claims, my loss fund goes deficit. I cannot pay claims, and it takes a while to get the money back in the account. Faster claim payment limits that. It just completely eliminates all the loss fund deficits. It eliminates all the loss funds that sit in the marketplace, which we think about 700 million pounds of capital. But most importantly, it allows the delegated claim authority to pay claims in minutes and seconds to the customers in electronic fashion. We have 13 managing agents who have signed up for faster claim payments. They represent 50% of the volume by marketplace, and Rich Boyd, who leads that team, I gave him a goal of 10, said he's going to get it to 15, and I'm going to have to buy him a nice holiday gift. Now, there were some things that we didn't deliver this year. We said we were going to deliver new cover holder reporting standards, which are the data standards for delegated authority. We did not deliver those standards this year for a couple of reasons. One is we wanted to better align them with the open market data standards, the CDR. Secondly, the marketplace was telling us that we needed to have a more robust data strategy for delegated authority. And thirdly, there may be a chance that we can use the gateway, once it's built, for delegated authority business. So we paused that work, and you'll see that on the slide. Secondly, in the early part of the year, we said to the marketplace we were going to create a data ingestion engine to allow them to electronically send data into DDM. Now, DDM is the common data store for the marketplace for delegated authority business. We did an RFP. The cost was too high. The solution was suboptimal, and we decided not to do that. And then finally, another example is we did not issue API specs for the gateway because we are turning these standards from CDR standards into Accord standards, and that took us a bit of time to do so. So in summary, we had a good year. We did a lot of the things we said we were going to do. We didn't do some things. We didn't do some things on purpose, and some of them got delayed for legitimate reasons. Let me turn it over to Steve and have Steve tell you what's on tap from the JV and DXC in the coming year.
Morning, everyone. So firstly, let me talk about the joint venture. So Bob mentioned at the beginning that whilst DXC are on the slides and are a key partner, the joint venture I think is often confused with DXC, and actually the joint venture is the venture between Lloyd's, the RUA, and DXC, and we couldn't do this journey without them. And they've been working really hard in 2022 to really bolster and grow their team. So there's now a kind of whole new set of people that are in the JV, bringing more transformation expertise, bringing more product owners that have delivered some of this stuff before, and more analysts that understand the market and the changes that need to happen. Getting the JV into that space where there's that extra capability and oomph has been a really, really big achievement. And since Sean has arrived looking after the JV as chair, that's a big change that's happened and a really key part of getting us to the place that we've been. Also, from a DXC point of view, John mentioned how enormous they are. I mean, DXC is a world-class technology transformation business, and so having them as then the delivery partner to the JV, delivering all of the software, is fantastic, right? It's a massive pool of talent and people to pull from. So they've got over 400 people. Some of them are in the room today that are working on that delivery. So there's a lot of expertise that's been put on the pitch to support. And I think DXC are now more than ever so behind making this work and landing this technology. Everyone wants this to happen. Beyond those two partnerships, there are others in the ecosystem that make this super powerful as a transformation, not least the work with people like Amazon and the AWS infrastructure that's being put in place. Bob mentioned about cloud. I mean, cloud in financial services is a super hot topic. And all of the infrastructure that we're building is going to be built on AWS, which for anyone that understands that, it just means that it's going to be super modern, super modular, super scalable, and super resilient. And that is, whilst it might sound a little bit boring, is so important, particularly as we move forward into the future and look to do more with data. When we talk about the sequences, so we talk a lot about the delivery in 5 sequences. So sequence 1 has all been about foundational tech components. Speaking on behalf of the JV here, we've been able to land sequence 1, and that gives us a foundational set of tools in the box to build from for all the other different parts. That's now done and ready, which means that's a big accomplishment in 22. Secondly, sequence 2, which has been running in parallel, delivers for the global market a premium and claim service. And that's going to be finished in Q1 next year. And the joint venture are already working with some of the market on adopting that. And that's going to be, from early next year, some of this technology, and you'll hear people talk about things like IPOS and ICOS, some of those components will be working for real on real business. Now, it will be global business, not London business, but that will really start to test some of this infrastructure that's been built and is an important part of the delivery. To support that, the vendors that Bob mentioned, they're all being helped on their journey of, well, what do they do with sequence 1 and 2? And that work is underway. And so as well as having partners in the market, brokers and carriers supporting that, we'll also have the vendors supporting that sequence 2 adoption early next year. Now, as we look forward into 23 and 24, there's a huge amount of software build still to do. London is complex. It is a more complex market. John mentioned it's the only true market, and that brings with it a lot of challenges and complexity. We've touched on already, this is a really massive change. This stuff is really, really old in the existing processes. Like the green screen stuff is hard to unpick and understand. The processes have been there for decades. So it's not an easy activity to change this. And whatever happens, we must make sure we don't break anything. We mustn't impact the market in delivering these upgrades. So we need to be really thoughtful about how we do things. We need to be really thoughtful about giving people enough time to adopt. And a lot of that is about giving the technology vendors in the market that support the brokers and carriers to have enough time to really get themselves ready. So we've been quite mindful as we look at the roadmap for 23 and 24 to make sure that we give people time and that we don't try and do things at busy times of the year, because we all know that the renewal periods at 1.7 and 1.1 are not great times to be landing change, and so we've been thinking a lot about how we work around that. We've also thought about how we kind of talk about the delivery and how we display it. So we've now, in this kind of updated roadmap, we've got the build and test activities up here, and then the kind of key vendor and market milestones at the bottom. So this is important because we're trying to help the market understand, well, when do they need to look and wake up and ingest information? What are the call to actions for them at different times over the next couple of years? And you'll see there are some quite key things that we'll be working with them to do over the next 24 months. We recognize, though, and John mentioned that the timelines for some of these things have slightly moved to the right. And that's partly because the complexity that I mentioned, but it's also because we've evolved the scope slightly as well. So the gateway is a good example where we hadn't fully worked out the alignment with Accord when we originally spec'd the gateway up. And actually now the gateway is going to be effectively Accord aligned and ingesting all of that Accord information. That wasn't fully known at the time of contracting. So there are some scope changes as well as the complexity that have meant some slight movements to the right. And then also just making sure we've got the right people to support from an SME point of view, because the most important thing is that we include experts and we don't just have people going off and building things. And getting people's time is difficult. So we mentioned Sequence 1 and 2. They are available in Q1 and people will be starting to adopt them, which is a brilliant milestone. As we then move forward to sequences 3 and 4, currently we're expecting 3 and 4 to land at the end of Q2. So this is, sequence 3 is about the open market business, effectively. Sequence 4 is about delegated. And sequence 5 is the gateway component. And so 3 and 4 were expected to complete at the end of Q1 in 24, and sequence 5 at the end of Q2 in 24. And these are a few months to the right of where we originally had hoped, due to some of the reasons that I'd mentioned. But for me, it's all about getting them in and testing them at the right time of the year, because you're not going to be able to do the market acceptance testing when everyone's crazy busy on renewals. It's just not going to happen. So we hope also that the planning of things like our MAT testing are going to be at a time where the market has the headspace and the capacity to think about this stuff. Now, we recognize that this plan at the moment is also a big bang plan. That's kind of been how things have been badged. The JV and DXE have agreed, and we're working together on, can we do something to break that down? And we'll be looking early next year at, well, actually, is there a slightly more phased approach that we want to look at to avoid having this kind of big cutover period at the end? And there'll be more on that as we move through into the first quarter of next year. But we recognize that the market have mentioned, that is a worrying period, and it's also a long way away. How can we do more sooner? And we certainly want to be testing more things sooner and iterating, because anyone that knows me will know that iterating and evolving is definitely the way forward rather than waiting until it's all done. So that's kind of where we are on the plans. Then just turning back to, our ambition here, we must not forget that this is a paper-based market. I remember when I started in my previous employer about 15 years ago, and the first job that I was given was printing. My team did this. They printed out bits of paper that were people applying for accounts online, and then they passed them, distributed them to the team, and those people keyed them back into a system. And I thought 15 years ago, I was like, whoa, why does a bank, a world-class bank, do this? Then arriving here, obviously that's what we do here. So we are working from a low base, and it is going to take some time to get people up to speed. And we mustn't forget where we're coming from, and we mustn't forget that it's going to take some time for people to adopt. And this is not just a technology change, but it's a cultural change. It's getting people to behave differently and to act differently, because it's not just about the tech that's in front of you. It's about changing the way we do things. We've talked about cloud. We've talked about resilience. All those things as well are really important. And whilst they're a bit boring, they are becoming a key focus, certainly for the regulators. And lastly, the thing that I think has changed is that we're having a much more product-oriented approach to how we deliver. And I think that's going to be increasingly important as we move over the next kind of couple of years. And that means listening. It means focusing on the outcome and not just delivering the software. And it means trying to be, as I said, more iterative and not being afraid to say we need to do something slightly different as we move through the course of the next couple of years. So that's the roadmap and where we are and where we're trying to get to. Bob, do you want to talk a bit about the market and what we're expecting them to do?
Yeah, I think there's three key messages that would be helpful for the market to walk away with, but also for you to walk away with as you talk to the marketplace. The first one is that the tech will land in 2024. It'll land 1 to 2 quarters later than we anticipated, for all the reasons that Steve talked about. The good news is as you see from the slide, the market acceptance testing, which is where we really need to get users involved in using the technology, will happen in the summer months of next year. They won't happen at 1/7 renewals or 1/1 renewals, where people are busy and either are unable to do the testing or unwilling to do the testing. So it gives us a bit more time, as Steve said, to make sure that the new tech lands that's fit for purpose and is ready to use and has been properly tested. So that's the first message. The second message is, and this is, I think, really important for all of us who deal with the marketplace to understand, all of the tech providers, from PPL to any tech provider you want to talk about that supports the London marketplace, have now said, we will make our platforms compliant with Blueprint 2, which means we will make our platforms the ability to send data to the gateway and to get data from the gateway. As that comes online, it incredibly eases adoption because it takes away the burden for market participants to have to do wholesale changes to their systems. And the third thing is, and Joe, and when we get up here and talk in the panel a little bit later, we'll talk more about, is we've spent a lot of time so far this year on market engagement and readiness. Next year, we're spending a lot of time on what does the market have to do to get ready in 2023 to be ready to accept these solutions in 2024, including, importantly, this new Vanguard program, which is the early adopter program that'll give us some real proof of concepts in real life for market participants who are using the new technology. Let me turn it back to Steve to just talk a little bit about how are we going to deliver Blueprint 2, and then I'll wrap it up.
So I think the first thing is we need all of you to understand it better. And a lot of people do, but today is about giving you a lot more insight into what's happening. And certainly when you go out and walk around some of the different stands, understand some of the detail about what's happening, because you all have some interactions with the market in some way, shape or form. And so, we want to make sure that we all understand the mission and what we're trying to do, and we all understand the plan to get there. Secondly, we've got a set of brilliant market engagement partners that work across the Future at Lloyd's program and the JV. Those engagement leads are doing an amazing job of working with the market to really understand what it is that they need to do. And those people are really kind of, to a certain extent, the heroes of getting people to adopt and change this. So Joe and Peter's team are doing an incredible job on talking to people about this. Thirdly, we've got some brilliant playbooks that have been created by those folk. So there's an LMA playbook for carriers. There's a LIBA playbook for brokers. I only saw these when I came back from paternity leave, and they are really, really great documents understanding and synthesizing the detail, and they're really well structured. So if you haven't seen them or want to get hold of a copy, then shout, because they are really, really useful documents. Both of them are really helpful. And we put those out into the market to help people understand in a bit more detail what it is they need to do. Because we talk about the building blocks, but actually really understanding what a broker or carrier needs to do is important, and those documents help with that. And last but not least, we've got all of you here, and there's a lot of faces that I know, and there's a lot of faces that I don't know, but we want to hear from you about today and about what we're doing, because you know a lot about the market, you know a lot about what people are expecting, and you've got a lot of experience between you all. So talk to us. Tell us if you think something's wrong or needs looking at. Tell us if you're concerned about something. We really do want your feedback, because we all need to succeed in this together. This is a change for everybody, and it's going to change the way we all operate in some way, shape or form across the market over the next few years. So do talk to us And talk to us outside, talk to us on the stands, and let us know your thoughts. And do talk to us after the event as well. So on that, I'll hand back to Bob.
So I've been here, I guess it's 18 months, give or take. Maybe next week is 18 months. And I remember when I first got here, and I would go to market forums on this topic, there were three things that happened almost on a regular basis. One was there was a period of intense moaning, where we would talk about all the times it didn't work in the past. And at one meeting, I got so frustrated, I said something like, I also heard the coffee in the coffee house was really bitter 300 years ago. And then there was the, it's not going to work. We've tried this before. We've tried it 10 times. Someone gave me a list of all the people who had jobs like mine in the past, and that was a kind of funny tombstone thing where I was like, at the last one, the only thing that hadn't been put in is the expiration date. And then the third thing we'd get was when we would ask for what we should do to move forward or who could help us, there was a lot of silence. And I always felt like I was trying to drag a group of people through a conversation to get to an outcome. I don't feel that way anymore. We still get a little bit of moaning because that's the way things are in life. We all like to moan about the weather and other things. But generally speaking now, I think people do believe this transformation program will land. And what the marketplace is looking to hear is, what do I need to do to get ready? And how do I make sure that I have enough time to get it into my budget? So I think that's a lot of progress. Now, you look at the roadmap, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be done. But as Steve said, building the tech is actually the easier part. Changing the habits and the business processes so we get a better outcome from an underwriting standpoint, from a contract certainty standpoint, from ability to move the money quicker than we move it today, and to do proper regulatory reporting are the harder things that we have to get done. But I do believe we'll get there, and we need advocates, so we need you to be advocates. We need you to spend time today to understand where we are and where we're going. We have a panel discussion coming up next to do that, and then afterwards you have time to spend time in the breakout zones, which I would really like you to do. So I'll bring the panel up. Thank you very much.
So delighted to welcome a number of our workstream leaders to the stage. Got Rachel Bryan at the end, who leads Delegated Authority. Joe Dainty, who is our second Deputy Market Transformation Director, looking at adoption and readiness. Cassandra Vukarup, who looks after our open market and data work streams. And you've already heard quite a bit from Steve today, and he's going to be joining the panel to talk about claims. So first and foremost, we'll do a quick, short and sharp roll on the programme. So Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about Delegated before we kick off with some more specific questions?
Absolutely. So my role on the programme this year has been to look at all things delegated. That's being looking at the studying of DCOM as a solution, and importantly now what we do with the DA strategy that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Joe, over to you.
Yeah, hi. So I think that's been mentioned a couple of times now, but I'm looking after market engagement with my colleague Peter Houston over there. So it's a joint team between DXE, JV and Lloyd's. So my job is engaging with the market, brokers, carriers, vendors, and making sure they're ready for the changes.
Fun and games at the moment, Joe.
A little bit, always.
Cass.
I'm in charge of open market and data, so all the things that have been mentioned. So we've got the CDR, we've got the process roles and responsibilities, the MRC, and getting the market ready to kind of adopt that as first kick on one.
So you've already heard from me. So my day job is looking after the delivery of delegated open market data and claims. Outside of that, I deputise for Chris Halberd, and at the moment I am standing in as well for Rich, who unfortunately can't be with us today to talk about claims. So that's me.
Thanks, Steve. So we're going to kick off and talk about open market and data to begin with. So Cassandra, I'm going to come to you. We've talked a lot today and heard from Bob and Steve about the importance of data. So why is data so important, and how does it underpin the solutions that we're delivering through Blueprint 2?
So data. The CDR, let me just start in the beginning here. The CDR, the core data record, was created to facilitate 4 use cases. And this is actually really important that everybody in this room understands this, because there seems Sometimes people get confused, but it is for that straight-through processing. So it's for tax validation and calculation, it's for accounting and settlement, it's for claims matching and regulatory reporting. That is why we've created the core data record. Now, what's really important here is if you think right now how the Bureau gets an MRC, it goes through, they root through the clauses, they go, what does that mean, does that not mean, go back and forth, right? And it's almost as like you're speaking different languages. So getting a good common definition of what the data fields are and it being the right record, it's taking the guesswork out of the processing, and it also takes the guesswork, if you think between brokers and carriers, they also go back and forth with each other. So it's not just our processing that they're helping, we're helping the actual entire market help their processing, right? So that's kind of the key. In terms of the solutions, and I need to give a shout out to my product owners in the back, Sarah Thacker and Wasim Mohammed. They have worked extensively with the market, and as John pointed out, 200 brokers, 50 some odd managing agents. I think the joke is you walk into a room and there's 20 people, you get 40 opinions. So there's been a real, not only content driving decisions, but the emotional resilience to get to the products that are going to be all launched in Q1. This team has done an amazing job, and I really want you to ensure that you go talk to them about the detail that I'm totally whitewashing over in this presentation. But you've got the CDR core record, the process roles and responsibilities have been as how you facilitate that data through the marketplace. And the MRC has it, which was formerly called the IMRC, we're now calling it the MRC. Please only call it the MRC when you go out there. The MRC is taking those data points and also pulling them out in an easier way to understand and format. So that hopefully will create a very thorough straight-through processing and reduce the hand-holding in the back office.
Thanks, Cassandra, ultimately making it better, faster, and cheaper. So whilst we're on the topic of data, I wanted to come to Rachel next to talk to you a little bit about the work we've been doing to look and create a delegated authority strategy for data.
Thanks.
So Rachel, if we start there, and then perhaps we can look more broadly to some of the delegated authority solutions and what we've been doing this year to really get them into a usable state.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Hannah. So as we heard from Cassandra there, the sort of lifeblood of this market is data, and it's exactly the same within delegated. But 5 or 6 months ago, we got together with our market advisory group, which is chaired by Paul Brady, to really understand kind of what do we do next with data. And they reiterated 3 major pain points that we've been working through. Firstly, a pain point around what I would call operational friction. It's really painful moving data within the delegated world at the moment. It's really distributed, and we use these things called bordereaux, which are effectively Excel spreadsheets that get manipulated by multiple participants as we go through the value chain. That's the first problem. The second challenge is DA performance. At the moment, it's what we call hit and hope at best, which means as an underwriter, I make some decisions at the beginning of my year. I hand my pen over, and I hope by the end of the year that the performance is going to be good and I've had a good year. So how do we better support that in-year review of performance? And thirdly, the challenge that we've heard is tax and reg data is not at the level of granularity that we're going to need to keep our regulators happy going forwards. So all of these problem statements really resulted in us thinking about how do we think about delegated data more strategically. With that in mind, we thought about how do we shift delegated so it's got much closer alignment to the work that we've been doing in open market, so we can make the most of that technology that's been built through the gateway, and that we can get the London market onto effectively one standard. Secondly, we've seen lots of innovation within the delegated space. We're seeing the rise of super MGAs. We're seeing lots of technical investments made in this space. So how do we use that and leverage that technology and that innovation that's happening in the market to better help supporting the movement of data through the market, through things like API, and the gateway will certainly support us in that. And thirdly, a core component of the delegated data strategy is that we think small first and then we build and grow. So let's focus first on how we move things like money, before we start thinking too big in terms of boiling the ocean with things like how we think about the totality of all of the underwriting data that we've got in the market. So that's a little bit on the DA data strategy. Do you want me to talk about DCOM?
Yes, I think that would be worthwhile, particularly around the work we've done this year to make it a more usable, credible platform.
Absolutely. So DCOM, so Delegated Contract and Oversight Manager, is a solution that's been live in the market for about 1.5 years now. So the beginning of the year was a little challenging with the solution going through 1/1 renewals. We were finding that the solution wasn't quite working as well for users as it could be. So we sort of set ourselves a mission this year to focus on 2 things. Firstly, stabilising the solution, and secondly, making it as usable as possible based on the feedback that we've been given with market participants, by market participants rather. So I'm really, really, really proud of the team. We've managed to put live 4 releases this year, and actually this is our first solution that we've managed to move into a BAU kind of run mode now, and it's being looked after by the DT team and the markets team. And Hannah, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to the whole of the DA team within the Future at Lloyd's, the markets team, and group technology, who have come together fabulously to make it possible.
Probably have a little round of applause before we come on to
Well done, team.
Thank you, Rachel. So we spent a little bit of time talking about open market data, delegated authority data, and our delegated platforms. Now we're going to come on to talk a little bit about claims, which is arguably, from a customer perspective, the most important point in the insurance cycle is when they come to make a claim. That's, after all, why we buy insurance. So, Steve, I'm going to come on to you to ask about the work that we've been doing around the claims journey and the benefits that faster claims payment will bring for customers.
So first of all, I mean, if you really want to understand the in-depth bit about claims, there's a whole stand out there. So I'd really encourage you after this to go and spend some time with the team. Ken and others are out there, and as Hannah said, claims is really when the rubber hits the road, right? That's your moment of truth, if you like, for an insurance product. So it's definitely worth exploring some of the things that are going on. I mean, in the claims journey, there's kind of 2 sides to the coin. So you've got the broader claims vision that the team are continuing to work on with the market, and that's about how is all of the software that we're delivering and that we talked about in the plans going to change the way we do claims. So we mentioned about Bob mentioned EFNOL, so being able to do a much more automated, straight through first notification of loss. Some of those types of things are going to be really transformational when they land to the overall claims process. But on the other side, more immediately, in claims, we've been able to do some stuff already. So faster claims payments is something that we've been able to land this year. And we ran this pilot, and really, faster claims payments is, in a nutshell, something that makes a huge amount of sense. And when you look at how we do it today, it kind of doesn't. So the equivalent of how we do claims today, if you imagine in your own personal finances, it would be like taking, something like £10,000 and putting it in an account just to have there as a hopper and not being able to touch or use it or kind of earn any interest or do much with it because you never know when a payment's going to need to come out. Well, that's quite inefficient from a cost of capital point of view. And also, if you get something that comes out of there that's, over a month, more than the £10,000, you run out of money, and then the other claims can't be paid. So it kind of doesn't really make that much sense as a model. But it's kind of linked to this whole way that people used to do batches and think about things in less of a real-time way. Obviously, we're all used in our personal lives to moving money straight away. Faster payments as a concept is something that's been around for a long time. You send a payment to someone, it arrives immediately. That's kind of how you expect things. And what faster claims payments has done is basically enabled that in our market. So a claim can be paid straight away when a managing agent signs up. And the money, rather than moving from this kind of central hopper, I think John mentioned there's about 700 million of capital tied up in there. We don't have the central hoppers in faster claims payment world. We just pull the money effectively by direct debit straight out of the managing agent's funds that they have in their ecosystem. So it takes away the need for these central pots of money that are kind of scattered all over the place and is is really quite transformational in terms of the speed to pay claims. And we mentioned about Hurricane Ian. We've been paying some of those in the pilots that we've been doing, and it really will change the way that people get paid and move the dial significantly. And ultimately, people want the money, right? House burns down, or there's a hurricane, or whatever. You need the money. And this is, fast claims payment is very transformational in terms of speed of getting the money and efficiency for the market. And it's great we've been able to do that this year while we wait for that broader claims vision to land as we move through 23 and 24.
Thanks, Steve. And as we've heard already today, FCP is already making some really good waves in the market with some claims paid out for Hurricane Ian already. So we've heard about open market, delegated authority and claims, so really the solution part of the build. Now I'm going to come to Joe to talk about adoption, because it's great that we can build these things and we've got a team between the JV and Lloyd's really powering this, but ultimately we need the market to adopt the solutions and the technology. So Joe, what are we doing to engage with our market participants and really get them to understand and ultimately adopt the solutions?
Okay, so there's the first thing, as we mentioned before, is that dedicated team and the cross team, and we've set up, and you'll see when you go out to see the stands later on, we've set up 10 communities, 6 carrier communities, 3 broker communities and a vendor community. Each one's got a dedicated engagement partner, and we're meeting with those, and that the carrier communities cover every community, every carrier, Lloyd's, all company. The brokers cover all of the brokers, so there's no one untouched by that engagement effort. And we aim to see certainly the top 25 brokers and all carriers once a month. So we're actually sitting down with these people, explaining the solution. I think up to this point, it's been focused on getting them to understand the solution. I think as we go through next year, and we'll maybe talk about that a bit later on, it is about the readiness and what they need to do. But the first step has just been getting to a really good understanding of what's in it for them, what are the benefits, what do they look like, what are the solutions like, and what do they need to do, what do they need to be thinking about. One of the interesting, we've done a recent market survey a few weeks ago, where we surveyed all of the parties that have said, well, not the vendors, we're speaking to them slightly differently. And what's come out is quite positive, because what we were looking at is there's 2 main ways to engage with these services. So there's a sort of transitional method that you can look at working with these services, and that's broadly, there are some changes, but broadly you can operate as you operate today. But obviously where the real benefits are working with these services on a digital basis, and everything that's been spoken about here, by the core data record and also digital premiums and digital claims as well. Now we're expecting a market, and again, Bob and Steve mentioned it, it's a market that has got decades of working this way, and to move to that digital, we'd expect there'd be some, a hard yard for the market to move, let alone DXC. And that's one of the reasons why the transitional services are there, to ease that path into these digital solutions. But in the solutions, in the survey that we took, we actually asked the question, what's your intent on working with these services and premium and claims? What we did say, 40%, don't know, too early, need a bit more information, which is always good, because it gives us a job to do. And then, but what was good is we saw over 40% of the top 25 brokers are intending to work with these services on a digital basis. And that's massive at this stage. We've still got a year and a bit to go but we're already looking at 40% of the top 25 brokers looking to work on a digital basis. So we've got to get it right and get it out there, because they're looking to use it. Similarly, on the carrier side, it was over nearly 30%. And again, a lot of these processes are embedded in those systems, but their intent is to break that and start going with digital. And I think that the work we're doing at the moment is very much about comprehension, and that's going well. And as I say, as we go into next year, it's going to be more about, are you ready? How can we help?
And the larger number that adopt, that will really start to aid our benefits case for the other insurers and brokers across the market as well.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits we looked at, we did some benefit work, and we identified over 100 benefit areas. We looked at the opportunities rather than the cash, because the amount of benefit will change organisation to organisation. Everyone's different. Yeah. But if you look at those benefit opportunity areas, if you like, there's over 100. If you think that quite a few are common, so if you go transitional or you go digital, you're going to get the benefit either way. So that's positive, because it means that the overall solution is good. But if you go digital, 30 of those benefits are only available if you go digital, whereas there's only 4 on the transitional side.
And another plug for our breakout zones, but you can find out more outside in a moment as to what sits behind going the full digital route versus the transitional services as well. So big thanks for the detail on each of the different solutions and our market readiness approach. I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up the panel, and I'm going to put these to each of you. So Bob talked before about how we've ticked off the majority of milestones in 2022, but there were some that we did delay and defer for the right reasons. So I'd really like to hear from each of you as to some of the challenges that we faced in 2022 as well. Rachel, I'll come to you first.
Sure, thanks, Hannah. So Bob talked actually to a couple of the bigger challenges that we've had within the delegated authority stream this year. So firstly, we had to make a very deliberate decision not to go ahead with just polishing the cover holder reporting standards, but take that full step into rethinking what the data strategy looks like. So that was a difficult decision, but sort of very strategic. The second is the decision that we've made around DDM. So DDM is Delegated Data Manager. It's actually run by Limos on behalf of the market. So we had to make that difficult decision that we wouldn't invest further in that solution from an ingestion engine perspective, because it was frankly just super expensive and technically quite complex. So as a result, we made that difficult decision to not invest at this point, but to place our focus in terms of what the DA data strategy looks like. And that's difficult, right, to say to our markets, it's going to take us a little bit longer to figure it out. But as we do, and we're getting great engagement with the market across our cover holder community, our broker community, and our managing agent community. We actually have a survey that's live at the moment where they're giving us feedback on the data strategy. I think we're just going to come to a much better conclusion for the market, leveraging all of the solutions that are going live through the joint venture. So a tough decision, but I think in the longer run, the right one.
Thanks, Rachel. Cassandra and Steve, can we come to you on open market data and claims?
So open market, I think there was the expectation of the CDR alignment with Accord coming out this side of the year and not in Q1. I'd like to take a step back and go, I know John mentioned it as well, most other areas of insurance already have a standard in place. It has taken them close to a decade to get those aligned in place. And we're doing it in, now would be just over a year. So I don't think we're late. But that was getting things right and putting it to place. The process as well, right? This is reinventing a process within a market that is a unique market, being a subscription market. So getting that, and that only being a quarter over is different. And then the MRC. The MRC, the feedback we got and the market engagement was unbelievable. It was great. Everybody really took a lot of time in going through it. So to give the consideration to all the participants who put down that heavy level of feedback, we've needed just a little bit more time to get through it and get through those topics. So that delay is basically based on really great market engagement. So all positives for me. Steve?
I think we need to get an MRC jar.
Yes.
Charity jar.
I do agree.
I would have had to put lots in that the last couple of days. So look, from a claims point of view, I think the big challenge this year has been, to a certain extent, kind of continues, which is how we align the thinking that we've had in Future at Lloyd's with the thinking in the joint venture. And I guess pre my paternity leaves at the start of the year, those two sets of thinking were really quite different. Coming back now, those two things are starting to come together quite a bit. And importantly, the two groups are starting to work closer together. And, you know, I know Bob's been doing quite a lot of work on trying to remove this kind of barrier that largely we created ourselves between the JV and between Future at Lloyd's to make it much more about one team. And so I think that's been probably the big challenge on claims, which is kind of having two slightly different views of what the claims vision for the future kind of automated claims solutions looks like. And I think actually we're in a much better place now, but we've probably still got a little bit more work to do just to get that kind of proper alignment. And also, I guess, with the third part of that, which is just aligning with the market on exactly, you know, the outcome that they're going to get. I don't mean the specific bits of technology in the box, but what people will be able to achieve. I think that's been our kind of really big challenge for this year, and something that we just need to focus on for the first part of next year too.
Finally, Joe, any challenges in the market engagement space?
God, no. So probably just a couple to call out. I mean, the first one is just getting the team set up itself.
Yeah.
So it was the first, joint team. A lot of it come together, so it was the first one of that. And also we were trying to set it up in a short space of time, but with people who are respected and are market experts in their own right, so they can be credible when they go out in that. So certainly couldn't have done that without the support JV, and especially working closely with Peter. It just would not happen. I'd like to thank the whole team that have given up some fairly senior jobs in the market in many cases, and people that have come from Lloyd's and even Limos I've come across, that have come in and realised that this needs to be done, and to set the time to do that and joined in a very short space of time. So I'd like to thank them very much for that. The second thing, probably working with the vendors, getting them into the right space, because we've never really focused on the vendor. We've all sort of always recognised that it was hugely important, the act that the vendors needed to do, but the focus on that was quite different. We didn't even know what vendors actually interacted with the central services. So we had to build the database, then go out and then encourage them and then give them the material. And probably the last one, which is still going to be a bit difficult till next year, is trying to explain to a market who really want the detail, when we've only got a relatively high level at the moment, and there's constant demand for, I need to understand this, and we're talking to operational people that need to understand, what field is it, what does it look like? And it's very hard to do that with a market. And again, the JV have been fantastic on making sure that we get all the level of detail that is available, so we can get that out into the market and create the artifacts that Steve's been talking about.
And certainly keeps us and the programme team busy, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So one final question before we wrap up. Let's keep this one super short and sharp before we go and explore the breakout zones. Flash forward to 12 months' time. Where do we need to be this time next year? Rachel.
We need to be, from a delegated perspective, absolutely clear around what that data standard looks like, and it's actually well understood by our community. The delegated world is one which is actually around the world. They're really, really, really close to their customers. So being able to be out of our Londonisms and in the market, that's where we need to be.
Joe?
Well, next year we'll be 3 months away from starting MAT. So I'll be on my 14th double espresso. And we'll be making sure that the comprehension stage is well passed. What they need to do is being well understood. And we'll be working with them and the people who are struggling a little bit to make sure that they've done what they need to do to start testing.
I think Joe said my part.
What he said then.
What he said. No, legit.
And Steve?
Two things. So we'll have doubled or tripled or quadrupled the number of managing agents sign up to faster claims payments. And importantly, we'll then have the binders flowing through there that kind of gets us the volume.
Yeah.
I've got a target in my mind. I won't say it out loud because the team will shoot me. And secondly, we'll be well underway with the claims build for in line with the vision that we've got for claims. That will really be well underway, and kind of to Joe's point, we'll kind of be near completion, and we'll be starting to get ready for the testing of that.
So a busy 2023 to come, but it sounds like we're in really good shape, and we've got a plan to get there. So big thank you to Rachel, to Joe, to Cassandra, and to Steve for giving us a little bit more of a flavour of the solutions. As we've said, please do take the time to go and look at the breakout zones outside in just a moment. I'm going to hand over to Bob just to wrap things up, and then look forward to catching up with you outside for some snacks, which I'm sure will be a delight to everybody's ears, and to explore those all-important breakout zones. Bob.
Thank you, everybody. Let's give a hand to the panel. They've heard me say this every day. They make me look a lot smarter than I am because I just listen to what they say and repeat it. Listen, I guess there's 2 or 3 key messages for you to walk away from. One is this program will deliver. And unlike other efforts that have tried and failed in the past, this one will deliver, and I'm very confident about that. I think we have the market sentiment behind us. Secondly, the tech is relatively easy as compared to the overall transformation. And the thing that we're going to have to work on is finding new ways to process business with a fulsome set of data that are different than how we do it today, which is part of the work that Cassandra's been spending a lot of time on. Thirdly, the journey, as you heard Rachel talk about around delegated, is not finished yet. We do have to figure out what is the data strategy for delegated, how do we streamline that ecosystem. It is 40% of what flows through Lloyd's, and it's 40% that's quite convoluted in terms of how we get data to the right place. Finally, it's important for you to understand, at least at a high level, what we're trying to do and that you advocate for it, because we still have another 18 months or so before this all lands, and people get tired, people lose their attention span, people see something that gets delayed and they assume that that means something more ominous for the overall program. We need you to be advocates. And then finally, for all of you, and I can look around the room as I did at the start of this and see the people that have helped me deliver what we've delivered so far, and to everybody else in the room, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you've done. Enjoy the breakout zones and happy holidays.